Except they went around and did it after they already primed and put a coat of paint on. Why would you do that?
I'll tell you why. I will right now. Yo, what's cracking, folks? Jeremy Vassar here with Practical Painting. We are professional painters here to help DIYers become better painters. And about a week and a half ago, we got a comment on one of our videos from Drew Culpers. I hope I'm saying your name right, Drew. And he goes, I'm not a painter. In fact, I'm a computer geek, but a large tech YouTuber has recently been talking about his experience with painters messing up his new house, and that's how I found this video. There are clips of him ranting about the situation. I think it'd be interesting seeing your reaction to those clips, specifically the paint rant from and why is it called eggshell clips from LMG Clips. So we got that comment and we've looked up those videos. I have since watched them, so this won't be technically a reaction video, but it'll be my response to it. The clip is from Linus Tech Tips. Now, his main channel is really big. He's got 14.5 million subscribers. Linus does very well, and I've actually watched quite a bit of his content. And so my editor, Dubes, my cousin, he's a big fan of his as well. Overall, I really like Linus. I like his channel. I watched a lot of his stuff. That being said, he went on a rant in one of his live streams, and then they cut out part of the rant and then put it on the Clips channel, which is what we'll be watching here in a second. He is talking about interior painting that he's having done at his house. To put myself in a little bit of context, in case you haven't watched his channel before, I'm a professional painter. I've been painting for over 21 years now. My brother and I have been out on our own painting professionally for about 16 years, and our bread and butter is high-end interior residential painting, which is exactly what he's talking about in this video. And I'm gonna be fair. I'm not trying to rip anybody up or be a complete tool, but Linus gets some things incorrect, and so do the painters. So I wanna be fairly even Steven across the board with my views on things. Let's watch, shall we?
With the new house being painted, are you comfortable with others doing it, or would you rather do it, considering you used to work as a painter?
All right, so right there, he apparently has had some painting experience in the past. I'm going to guess it is way long ago, because he's been a YouTuber for a hot second, so we'll continue.
Okay, did you bring that one up because you know how pissed off I am about the paint job they've done?
Oh, I knew you were pissed off about all of the stupid little tapes.
That's one of the things.
I didn't know there was more.
Are you guys ready for Linus story time? Our painters, who I will not name because it is not my intention to drive any business to them, have done a great job of applying product. Fantastic job. Straight lines, smooth wall finish. I want to give credit where credit is due.
I thought that was nice. That's nice.
But they have taken the most ass backwards, frankly, I don't know any word to describe it other than moronic approach to painting our house that I have ever seen in my life. They painted about 40% of the house, okay? About 40% of the house. Are you wearing nail polish?
Yeah.
Oh, cool, okay. They painted 40% of the house and managed to put the wrong product on every single surface.
What?
Okay, so originally we were planning to do touch-ups on the ceiling because we were only going to take a little bit of, a little square of drywall here, a little square of drywall there. So what we did was ceiling paint fades, right? Particularly on popcorn ceiling because you have to use oil, and oil paint fades to a much greater degree than latex paint.
All right, time out. I asked around a lot about this because he was saying you have to use oil-based paint over oil, and I don't know what he's talking about, other than I think so for those that don't know about what a popcorn ceiling is, popcorn is it's a spray process that texturizes the ceiling. Usually you do it over stuff that's poorly finished. Sometimes you do it in like industrial applications as well. But when you spray that, and I think maybe back in the day, like 30-ish years ago, it may have been an oil, that may have been an oil product, and then to go over that, you would have to maybe use another oil product to get it to stick. But all of the popcorn ceilings that I've dealt with in the last 20 years have all been latex based. The mixture that they use to actually put the popcorn and spray it up, because we've done that too, that's latex based as well. And so if you're going to paint it, the only reason you would need to use an oil product, first off, there's not like an abundance of oil based ceiling paint. I don't know of any off the top of my head. That's something that's changed quite a bit since the VOC laws changed. There's really not a lot of interior oil-based products being used. There's a few trim products, a few specialty products, but most things are either hybrid or completely water-based. So that's just something. The only reason you would need to prime or paint in a popcorn ceiling with an oil-based product would be if it had stains on it, like dark, like soot stains or something like that you're trying to hide. And then in which case you would use something like a bin primer that is shellac based. That's an oil based primer. That'll seal in any soot marks or anything like that. And then you can go straight over that with a latex based product like Promar ceiling paint or whatever you like using. So that's just one little thing. I think that maybe more because he's just not been in the industry for a while. That's just my guess there. But you can go almost all the popcorn ceilings I've dealt with, you can go straight over with latex. So just a heads up there.
Okay, so what we did was we grabbed a little slice of the existing ceiling and we color matched it. Okay, but the plan changed when they ripped out half the frickin' ceiling drywall. And we were like, okay, well, we should just do a fresh coat of paint. And once you do a fresh coat of ceiling paint somewhere, a ceiling will look white to you until you put new paint on it and you're like, holy crap, it was not white before. So what they did was, even though that changed, and they were supposed to know this, they applied color-matched, faded color to the entire ceiling of 2 floors of the house.
So this is a huge mistake on the painter's part, and he should be upset about this. And what he's talking about with color match, if you can, they actually have residential or they have color match lasers that you can buy for yourself from Sherwin-Williams, but what the painters did, which is to get the most accurate match, they cut out a piece of the ceiling, the existing ceiling, and took it to Sherwin-Williams, had them laser match it for the touch-up spots. Now, what's a big mistake that the painters made is that as soon as you decided to paint everything in that house, all the ceilings, they probably only got a few gallons tinted, if that, for the touch-up stuff. But then they went and had all of the gallons tinted that matched color. So that sounds like a miscommunication, but it's also just common sense. I think that's just a big kind of flub on the painters, where there's no reason to match an old faded paint like he's saying. So that's definitely a mark against the painters. They really, and I think he's going to say this in a second, they should have just used a brand new untinted, extra white ceiling paint, like Promar ceiling paint, whatever they were using. So continue.
Okay, now let's talk about the walls. So they put the wrong color on the ceiling. Now let's talk about the walls. For the walls, I was explicit. The number of times that I said, I want my swear button. The number of times I said, eggshell. Okay?
We don't have a swear button.
Eggshell finish.
This is where it starts going off the rails.
For walls, you use eggshell. Do you know why? You use eggshell because it's a good balance between a more flat finish, which hides surface defects, okay, and a gloss finish, okay, which is scrubbable. Because in paint, okay, you can only suspend so many particles in the solvent. All right, so you've got your stain blocking pigments, okay? You've got your color pigments, all right? You've got your resin, okay? So that's what gives you that hardness. That's what gives you that scrubbability. Eggshell is the standard on walls because while it might look great to put a satin finish or a flat finish on your walls, it will look great until the second.
All right, time out. Right there, this is the first problem I have with this video, because he's going to keep going on this, is that he put flat and satin in the same sentence, saying they're like the same. All right, so that we're going to put a pin in that for now, and we're going to circle back, but that is incorrect.
Someone washes their hands in the bathroom, goes out into the hallway and kind of goes like this, and a little droplet of water gets on the wall, and you go to wipe it, and you're like, destroyed. Immediately destroyed. So you use eggshell on walls. The number of times that I said eggshell to the contractors, to the designers, it's in the documents, and it was like a meme. It was hilarious. Every time we talked to the head contractor, I'd be like, and it's eggshell, right? He's like, yes, of course, yes, it's eggshell. Okay? They put satin finish on the walls.
How much of them?
I looked up the specific product. Oh, many walls. I looked up the specific product. The first 2 reviews. It's not scrubbable at all. The painters come back to me. They're like, this is actually within the same range of the Master Painters Association, blah, blah, blah. I send them back their own stupid documentation. I go, hey, couldn't help noticing that the range, okay, the range of like resin content is enormous. Yes, the one you used happens to fall in the range, but eggshell is at the way other end of the range. And there's a reason that I asked for it. There's a reason I specifically said. And you know what's the best part? Is when I saw the satin paint cans on the job site, before they painted anything, I said, hey, those aren't for the walls. Please double check. Eggshell on the walls. And they were like, yes. Even after they applied the satin, they were trying to tell me that it was the right thing. And I went on, I forget who they were using, Sherwin-Williams, I think. So I went on Sherwin-Williams' site. I'm like, hey, couldn't help noticing that they have a product that is eggshell. So my conspiracy theory is, you know why I think they wanted to use satin is because it's easier.
All right, here's the
faster.
big kind of wrap up of this.
Remember how I said that flat paints, and that includes satin, hide imperfections? Well, they hide imperfections in your wall, but they also hide imperfections in your paint job.
Okay, so I don't know how they do things up there in Canada, but down here in America, satin is always shinier than eggshell. Or I'm going to say almost always. It is greater than or at the most equal to as far as sheen levels go. If you look up any sheen chart from any paint manufacturer, including Sherwin-Williams, which I'm intimately familiar with, the satin finish is going to be above an eggshell finish. So I've looked up the sheen charts. Here is Sherwin-Williams sheen chart, which is what they were going off of, and I'll probably put this up on the screen once we get this in post. But from their finishes, it's high gloss, gloss, semi-gloss, pearl, low luster, velvet, satin, eggshell, flat enamel, matte, and then flat. So that is super typical of how the sheens go. And then he's going to get into it a little bit when he was talking about what products they used. So I've watched this video, and I'm almost positive they used Super Paint Satin. And in that line of paints from Sherwin-Williams, there's no eggshell in that lineup. So that paint doesn't come in an eggshell. It goes from, I think it's flat, satin, and then I think they have a velvet and then a semi-gloss. And he's not incorrect about why people use eggshell on the walls. The part that is incorrect is saying that satin is less shiny than an eggshell. So satin is not anywhere close to flat. Satin is extremely shiny, so one of the products that we use a lot is the Duration line of paints from Sherwin-Williams, and that comes in flat, matte, satin, semi-gloss. Those are your options in that particular product. And the satin is incredibly shiny. It's way shinier than any of the other eggshell paints that we use. And when you look at paint sheens and what he's talking about, like the Master Painters Institute and all of that stuff, they have parameters for the amount of sheen you can have in a paint and still call it a flat, a matte, an eggshell, whatever. And the brackets tend to overlap. So if you think about it like, here's what you can call a matte paint. So you have matte, and then the next one up from matte is eggshell. And then the eggshell bracket kind of overlaps the matte bracket, and then satin will overlap eggshell. So potentially from different manufacturers, you could have a paint called a matte and a paint called an eggshell and then be like super on point and have the same level of finish, the same level of gloss. That's what we experience all the time with Duration Matte. Has about the same sheen level as Regal Select eggshell from Benjamin Moore. So like those two products, their finish quality and the shininess of the wall looks about the same, and you've got one called matte and one called eggshell. His main concern, and I think where the painters may have messed up, is that his main contention is he wants the finish to be durable, which is that's a good goal. I understand what he's talking about with like flecking your hands and rubbing, having the finish be scuffed. The issue comes when homeowners want a scrubbable surface on the walls, and that is almost no paint is scrubbable. There are paints that are wipeable and more wipeable than others. It used to be back in the day, the durability of a product was pretty much only correlated to how shiny it was, how high, like how much gloss was actually in the paint. With newer formulations, you have a lot more options with different products and different formulations, particularly on the latex side of things. There's quite a bit of advancement in the durability of certain products. And what if I were him, I think what I would be more upset about if I was Linus is that they used a not great tier of paint from Sherwin-Williams. We use a lot of Sherwin-Williams products, and all paint manufacturers make really nice paint and really crappy paint. So super paint is like, we don't use it. When there was a big paint shortage, we used the flat on the ceilings. It's like a mid to low tier level of paint. And I'm going to take just a shot in the dark that he's probably got a nice house. So and you can afford, for sure he's having all his work done, you can afford a higher tier level of paint. So if I were the painters, I would have said, okay, you're really concerned with the durability. We understand that's why you want an eggshell. Let's look at duration. Let's look at emerald, something that's got some rubberizing agents in it that they're going to hold up a little bit better. Again, even if you go shinier in those products and you get their equivalent of an eggshell, which with those it would be I would go with the matte. That's what we use. If you want to go way shinier and you're really concerned with it, you can go with the satin. A little bit too much of an aggressive sheen for my taste, but that's personal preference. But those paints are going to be more wipeable. Wipeable is different than scrubbable. As soon as you scrub a painted surface with a sponge, a paper towel, anything, and you shift it back and forth, you're going to, you're basically sanding the walls with some crappy sandpaper, like really, really high grit sandpaper. That's what you're doing with a sponge or a paper towel. And if you're rubbing it back and forth, that abrasive action is going to mar the sheen. It's just, it's gonna, I've seen it with industrial finishes, I've seen it all over the place, and we run into this all the time. There's certain products that hold up way better, and if he was dead set on saying, I want a really, really like tough finish on my walls in these high traffic areas, then I would use a much different product and go with something like Scuff X from Benjamin Moore, which does come in an eggshell. Or you could go with Sherwin-Williams. They just came out with their own version of Scuff X called Scuff Tough that also comes in, I believe, an eggshell finish. But again, I've worked with those products, and even the semi-gloss versions of those, which would be way harder of a finish and more durable than the eggshell, still, if you scrub it hard enough, it's going to mar that surface. So just wipeable is different than scrubbable. There are very few paints that are actually scrubbable. But again, the big issue I have with what he's saying, and he loops back around over and over again, is that satin is a lower sheen than eggshell. I found a great description of it on Benjamin Moore's website, which they have, in my personal opinion, have the best example of an eggshell. Like I said before, their Regal Select eggshell is my favorite, one of my favorite wall paints to work with. We just used it the other day, and in their description of eggshell paint, they say, eggshell finish, perennially popular with professional and DIY painters alike, has a low sheen reminiscent of flat or matte, but it is infinitely more durable than its namesake. So that is their eggshell, and then their next one up from that is pearl. Some brands have that, some don't, and then above pearl is satin. And so here's their description of satin paint. Often confused with other finishes, the difference between eggshell and satin paint is that satin delivers a higher gloss while offering better stain resistance and durability than lower sheens, including eggshell. So those are the two kind of best descriptions I've seen of those particular Sheens. And yeah, again, that's probably my main beef with this video, is that he's getting the order of the Sheen incorrect. And like I said, in almost every line of paint that I've seen, it goes flat, matte, eggshell, satin, semi-gloss, gloss. That is super standard for interior painting. And if anything, satin is going to reveal more imperfections in the wall than an eggshell would. So, and that's his kind of biggest contention. And if anything, also the satin would be more durable, but not necessarily in that super paint product. That is not, it's definitely not a product that I like using on the walls. And I definitely wouldn't recommend it, particularly for like a high-end interior paint job, which I'm guessing is what his house is. I'm pretty sure he's got again, like a pretty sweet setup. All right, he's got one more major point that I will kind of touch on. I'll let him roll into that.
Well, they hide imperfections in your wall, but they also hide imperfections in your paint job. They make it easier for you to roll on a nice, smooth-looking surface. Oh, it gets better. Right, I forgot. How many little pieces of tape?
Probably like 80.
Yeah, okay. There were walls.
One wall, yeah.
Yeah, there were literally hundreds all over the house of these little bits of masking tape for all the little surface divots and pinholes from pictures the previous owners had on, or little imperfections from the drywallers patching things. Except they went around and did it after they already primed and put a coat of paint on. Why would you do that? Because you know what happens, okay? You put your primer on, okay? You put your coat of paint. You go and notice there's a fucking hole in the wall. You put a little piece of tape on there, okay?
He gets
now,
real animated about this.
You have to go get your putty. You got to putty it. Then you got to prime it, because
Probably
you can't just paint right over putty. That's the other thing. That stupid satin product was a primer paint combo, so it was another laziness factor. Okay, so you got to take that. You got to now prime it, because if you paint over top of putty, the absorption rate is different on paint and putty. So now you got to prime it. Then you got to do not one, but 2 coats of paint over top of that imperfection that you fixed. Then you've got to feather your work so that you're hiding this change. Also, unless you're rolling it, right, you're going to have brush strokes, so you're going to have to roll it, which means you're going to have to paint. For every one of those little spots, you're going to have to paint an area this big. You're going to prime, paint, and paint again, an area this big. So on a wall, frickin' Jake, that wall, maybe this size with the 80 tape marks on it?
Yeah. I was trying to think of a parallel. You know, like cobblestone road? That's what it looks like. That's how many paint.
Why would you do that? You're just, I mean, they're billing by the job, right? They're not even billing me hourly. So why? Patch it first. The justification that was given to me for it was that it's easier to spot the imperfections when you've painted it already. But like, Jake, did it look not obvious? I mean, at least do some of it, so you're not, oh yeah, you gotta wait for the putty to dry. So you gotta putty it, wait, sand, wait, prime, paint. It's a 5-step process. And you want to do that as few times as possible.
And even after that, it still won't look perfect, because you
no,
now have
it
a
won't.
patch. Yeah.
You should have done it in the first place.
Okay, so here's the major problem that they're talking about right now, is that the painters primed everything. I would imagine there's some new drywall going through the renovations. That's super common. And then they primed and did a finish coat on top. And then they went around and did their spackling after that. Now, here's the mistake that I think the painters did. I'm guessing they're probably working with a general contractor, and maybe he's the foreman. So somebody went around, probably the foreman either of the paint crew or on the actual job site, and went around with tape and taped out any little imperfections in the walls. That can be a super bad look for the homeowner to come and see all the imperfections in the walls, and then just highlight them all with pieces of tape. It's more efficient to just be the one with the trowel and the spackle blade to go around as you're seeing everything hit those spots, instead of putting tape everywhere. You're just adding kind of an extra step to the process. But his main contention is not necessarily the tape everywhere. It is that they're spackling after the first finish coat went on. And the justification that they gave is it is easier to see imperfections in the walls once you put the finish paint on. That is 100% true, but how he's explaining it is not how anyone would do this. We do this all the time on our job sites. Obviously, if there's big spackle repairs, we do those first before we've primed anything. If we've got big repairs and anything that's got a lot of layers going on, but you're going to do 2 top coats anyway, okay? So if you prime the walls and then you do your top coat on there and then a bunch of stuff shows up, because no matter how thorough you are when you are like spackling the walls, when you put the finish paint on, particularly if it's a darker paint, you're going to see things that you just didn't see when it was primed. So a lot of times we'll put a top coat on and then scan the walls with, usually we have headlamps or flashlights, and we really make sure that everything's dialed in. And then we will spackle those areas, anything we that needs our attention, pinholes, whatever. That all gets spackled, then you sand it, you prime it, and then we call it getting everything back up to 1 coat. So now the walls are all back up to 1 coat. Keep in mind, you're going to do a full second coat anyway. So even if it looks a little patchy because you've rolled over primer and things like that, you're going to do an entire second coat over that entire wall. So you're going to cut everything in again, and then you're going to roll it again. And as long as you're not doing touch-up stuff after the second top coat, I would have beef if they were doing it after that. But they're not. They're doing it after their first top coat, which is completely normal in the industry. I know a bunch of painters that do it, including us. And just keep in mind, you're rolling on an entire second coat. That is the coat that really matters, so that the sheen all locks together and you get a nice uniform finish. So that is another point in this video that he is incorrect about. And I just think that the painters, if I were working for him, I would have been way more conscientious of what it looks like with like the tape everywhere. I would just have gone through, I'd have been the one with the headlamp on, and anything I saw, as soon as I saw it, I would spackle it and then just move on, so I'm not putting 1,000 things of tape everywhere. So that's just probably not how they're running that job site, but that's something that I would try to kind of smooth over so things went a little bit better. So that is my response to Linus's paint rant from a humble pro painter. And yeah, I think he got some stuff right. Painters got some stuff wrong, but Linus got a couple things wrong that he was super hung up about. So hopefully I explained those relatively succinctly. And if you thought I made any sense at all, do me a solid and tweet this video at Linus Tech. We'll list all their Twitter stuff in the video description. But maybe they'll see this and mention it on their live show. That would be cool. And yeah, that is going to do it for me. So until next time, y'all take it easy, work smart, and have a good one. Peace.
Amazing.